Good Sunday evening to you on this 23rd of August 2020 as we are monitoring Hurricane Marco as it nears a Gulf Coast landfall and Tropical Storm Laura as it interacts with the southeastern portion of Cuba. Remember to make all decisions solely based upon official forecast products from the National Hurricane Center, your local emergency management jurisdictions, or from your local National Weather Service forecast offices. So we have Hurricane Marco and Tropical Storm Laura. I have not posted a video in a while. We had the kind of tight grouping of Hurricane Hannah and Hurricane Isaias, and then we had a bit of a lull, and we had a wave train over the Atlantic, and now we are dealing with two active storms very close together, about 36 to 48 hours apart in terms of impact times, and that's what's making this a very unique situation. You kind of have one storm right on the heels of another, and that's what's posing a lot of question marks, and a lot of how these storms interact are, playing into the forecast, and little nuances like that are really important that may impact the eventual strength of Tropical Storm Laura, being the storm that's following Hurricane Marco. And right now, it's currently 8:14 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and I was waiting for the advisory to come out, but it looks like they're a little bit delayed, perhaps, trying to get the most accurate information. But Synoptic overview: we have a deep trough digging down here, bringing clear air. A beautiful day across the central part of the country. Beautiful but hot. Very hot. We have high pressure over here. We have some very severe wildfires out in California, started by lightning and these storms, these ridge riders, and then we have this deep trough, which is bringing a lot of shear down into the Gulf of Mexico, and then it is impinging on Hurricane Marco here. We have southwesterly shear, which is pushing everything off to the north and east, and that is why it has a pretty disheveled appearance. If you looked at these two images here, you would, and there you're doing the eye test. You have Laura and you have Marco, and you look at these and you say, well, Laura is probably the storm that's going to look a little bit healthier to you, even though it's interacting with more land, very mountainous terrain, just coming off the island of Hispaniola, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, and entering southeastern Cuba, the most mountainous portion of the island, kind of defying odds in terms of maintaining its intensity today up to a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm. And Hurricane Marco looking very disheveled, but still expected to bring life-threatening storm surge and hurricane-force winds as it continues to ride up this way toward, or it's a little bit inaccurate, to this way toward the Louisiana and Mississippi coastline throughout the night and into tomorrow. Again, the main question mark here is with Tropical Storm Laura, though. It's evident that Marco is going to make a landfall. It cannot go back through the Florida Strait. It cannot go down into the Caribbean, so it has to go the Gulf Coast. We know that for certain. What is uncertain is how Laura is interacting with the southern coast of Cuba and how it is pushing out this way. How will it interact with the land? Will it, disrupt the inflow? If the center stays over water and the, rest of the storm to the north, is still over land, it can still pull, moist air over Cuba, although, not the most favorable situation for the storm. It's kind of been doing that today. It seems to have been defying odds and maintaining its strength despite interacting with these really tall mountains, but that's going to disrupt the flow, and it's likely, with it being over land right now, the center kind of in this area, I think if I'm not mistaken, the latest forecast fix I was waiting for at the 8 p.m. advisory and have been unable to locate it, but it is over land at this point, and we can see that on radar. I'll show that to you in just a moment. But how it interacts with Cuba is going to be critical in determining how it enters the Gulf of Mexico, and once it hits this point in the Gulf of Mexico, it becomes a very uncertain and a very dangerous part of the forecast. It could have as much as up to 36 to 48 hours over the warm, open waters of the Gulf of Mexico with low shear. And with the anomalously warm Gulf of Mexico waters, there's a huge pocket here of warmer waters, a huge pocket off the west coast of Florida, and in the middle is it's not cool by any means, but the warmest waters are over here in the western Gulf and eastern Gulf of Mexico. And having that much time, your mind automatically goes to the recent storms. We had Hurricane Dorian, we had Hurricane Michael, and Hurricane Harvey, all intensifying, well, not Hurricane Dorian, but Michael and Harvey rapidly intensifying up until landfall in Florida and in, near Port Aransas, Texas, respectively. So, something we have to look out for. That is certainly a possibility in the forecast, but it's all going to come down to how it interacts with the southern tip of Cuba. So enough on looking at the satellite imagery here. Again, I show you this graphic. There's not much to look at. This is weather.gov/GIS, where you can find a lot of geographic information services for, anything from mesoscale meteorology to tropical to severe weather. And I show you this not to really glean anything from it, but to look and see the overall there's a lot of action going on. You have the track for Marco coming out this way, not expected to be a huge rainfall maker or wind maker, just kind of be a nuisance storm. And then you have Tropical Storm Laura, which is coming behind, currently forecast to become a Category 2 hurricane before making landfall somewhere between Houston and New Orleans at anywhere at this point. Her shifts in the forecast are very likely at this point, and something we'll have to look at. But there's a lot going on this graphic, so again, I'm going to break it down by going into each of the storms here. Marco, the current forecast cone shifting back this way, now expected to just kind of skirt the coast. So this is the 8 p.m. advisory, so it is still a hurricane, and it is expected to kind of jog this way and then skirt the coast, maybe skirting, possibly not even making a true landfall, but kind of skirting off the coast. This isn't the first time I'm seeing this, actually. So that's certainly kind of an interesting adjustment by the forecast here. But, again, the wind field being to the north and east because of that shear that's coming out, the southwesterly shear, impinging on the storm, pushing everything off to the north and east. But really, Marco is going to bring life-threatening storm surge and hurricane force winds. But the main interest and the most uncertain part of the forecast comes with Tropical Storm Laura, which now we do have a forecast cone. Yes, 8 p.m. So this is interesting because it currently with winds of 60 miles per hour, and now they've nudged the track a little bit farther south, going over this southern appendage of Cuba, and having the center stay over water before getting over this little peninsula of Cuba and then getting into the Gulf of Mexico. And look at this. This is 1, 2, 3 forecast points, so at least 24 hours over the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico. A lot of uncertainty there. Will the storm intensify? Likely. Will it intensify rapidly? That is unknown. But it certainly will be unimpeded with lighter wind shear, which we'll look at in just a second as well. So in order to look at what it's going to be doing, we need to understand what the storm is doing now. So we can look at this zoomed in radar imagery, and what you're looking at here in the background, this is Cuba, southeastern tip of Cuba. And then if you keep going down this way, the rest of Cuba juts out down here. But currently the center of circulation, you can make out the clear spin. Again, you can't really make that out with Marco, and we don't have radar for Marco right now due to it being out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. We'll have radar closer to tomorrow when it approaches closer to land. But you can clearly make out the spin in the center of Tropical Storm Hannah. If I go to the end here and let it animate and then stop it on this last frame right here, the center of Laura somewhere in this region, and currently being over land, drawing air over these really high mountains. It maintained its strength as it traversed Hispaniola, some very high mountains in Haiti and the Dominican Republic, but it didn't seem to care about that and kept marching on, and actually intensified a little bit today into a formidable tropical storm. So that's something we'll have to keep an eye on as it continues skirting south of Cuba. We can zoom out and get a full view of Cuba and what is going on with that, and you have some rain showers and some lightly associated bands with Laura over central Cuba, but there's some very high mountains down here which we'll be interacting with. But then if it gets past that, it's going to have pretty unimpeded track until it gets to these mountains on the peninsula of Cuba, and then enters Gulf of Mexico. And at this point is where a lot of the uncertainty begins, and it's forecast even sooner than that. As soon as the center gets off of Cuba is going to be a critical point in the forecast in determining how it intensifies and what exactly it does. Looking at the Cooperative Institute for Meteorological Satellite Studies out of the University of Wisconsin-Madison, we can look at a few closer images, and we can see the current storm, very healthy looking for a storm that's fighting with a bunch of terrain and very high, mountains. Here's a current point. I cannot actually draw or telestrate on this image, so I'll just use my cursor. And you have, the system here. You can clearly make out the, healthy divergence in the storm, the healthy outflow. The storm is breathing well, if you will, and then expected to traverse over southeastern Cuba. Actually, this forecast fix is very delayed, actually. It's actually over in this area. And going back over southern Cuba, clipping over this peninsula, and then going... here is Hurricane Marco right now, and then going out toward the Gulf of Mexico where it will intensify. So again, this is a very critical forecast, because currently forecast to become a Category 2 before making landfall anywhere from Houston to central Louisiana, or anywhere in the cone is actually in this point. But I say if you focus on kind of the center backbone of the cone, which, remember, a third of the time systems fall outside of the cone of uncertainty. That's why it's called the cone of uncertainty. And certainly, I have a little juxtaposition there, but certainly the impacts of tropical cyclones are not limited to the cone. So that is something to keep in mind. Laura is kind of a moderate-sized storm right now. Marco is pretty small and compact, but depending on what happens when Laura gets into the Gulf of Mexico will determine a lot into its intensity. Something to keep a watch on. We can't really say much at this point because we have to see how it interacts with the southern tip of Cuba. But I'm going to leave it off with that. I think that's a pretty good update video and the current status of what we have. We have Hurricane Marco approaching the Louisiana coastline, expected to kind of hover around and give some heavy rains to the southern Louisiana area and into southern Mississippi, and even into portions of extreme southeastern Texas as well. But the main story kind of becoming Tropical Storm Laura, as it is going to be following Hurricane Marco very closely, within 2 days. And that is where a lot of the question marks are coming from this. How will the storms interact? How will Laura, deal with the wake of Hurricane Marco? Will there be any upwelling in the north central part of the Gulf of Mexico, which at this time looks like Laura may avoid completely? It looks like, Laura may take a more direct track this way, while Marco is kind of sitting up here. So it may not have any impact at all in terms of upwelling with warm water in the Gulf of Mexico. All factors to watch. That's pretty much all we can say for now. We have to see how Laura interacts with the southern part of Cuba and see how it handles overnight tonight through tomorrow. And then early on Tuesday will begin to make its exit from the Cuban island and then enter the Gulf of Mexico, where a lot will be answered. So we will see about that. That's all I have for this video. I will be doing a daily update video until these storms are resolved and no longer a threat. No impacts here in North Carolina locally where I am based, but it's always important to pay attention to weather elsewhere because it likely will have an impact on you down the road. So that's all I have for this video. Thanks for watching. Feel free to share if you have any questions. Feel free to comment on this video, message me on Facebook, comment on a Facebook post of mine, and we will discuss all things tropics. So thanks for watching. Stay safe.